Welcome to our deep dive
Oh,
into 100 ways to communicate effectively.
okay.
Now, I know what you're thinking, another book on communication,
Yeah.
but this one's different.
Mm.
It's a Chinese text.
Oh,
So
interesting.
we're getting insights from a whole other cultural perspective.
Okay.
We got 10 chapters covering everything from listening to public speaking to relationship dynamics.
Wow.
Are you ready to uncover some communication secrets from a culture known for its subtlety and nuance?
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is that this book presents communication as a skill to be honed,
Right.
not just an innate talent.
I love that.
It really resonates with the idea that anyone can become a more effective communicator with the right tools and techniques.
So chapter 1 jumps right into the foundation of good communication,
Okay.
listening.
Mm-hmm.
And they start with this scenario of two women discussing a movie.
Okay.
One's completely engrossed, the other's obviously bored, her body language screaming disinterest.
Hmm.
But here's the twist. The first woman picks up on those cues and smoothly steers the conversation towards something her friend actually enjoys.
Oh.
It got me thinking,
Yeah.
how often do we miss these subtle signals? Or even if we notice them, are we willing to adapt our conversation to make the other person feel more comfortable?
It's such a powerful example of how attentive listening can transform an awkward situation into a genuine connection.
Yeah.
The book then delves into the nuances of active listening, going beyond just hearing words
Mm.
to truly understanding the speaker's intent and emotions.
Hmm.
They emphasize that it's not about mimicking body language,
Right.
but about genuine engagement. For
Mhm.
instance, they highlight the importance of leaning forward, nodding, and maintaining eye contact, not as a checklist,
Right.
but as a way of conveying genuine interest.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just fake active listening.
Right.
You have to actually be present in the conversation.
Yeah.
They even have this story about a customer service rep who learned this the hard way. He thought he was being efficient by multitasking while on a call with a customer.
Hmm.
But he realized that taking notes, even in casual conversations, actually helped him focus and process the information better.
Oh, wow.
Plus, it showed the customer that he was genuinely engaged.
Right.
I bet that made the customer feel heard and valued instead of just another case number.
Absolutely. And that's a key takeaway here, showing that you value the speaker's input.
Yeah.
The book also highlights the importance of tailoring your response to how someone explains things.
Okay.
Like, are they using technical jargon or layman's terms? Do they seem emotional or analytical?
Right.
Adjusting your communication style to match the speakers can make all the difference in building rapport.
I can see how that would make you a much more effective communicator in any situation.
Yeah.
But they also make a point of saying active listening doesn't equal interrupting,
Oh, right.
which I think is a trap we all fall into sometimes.
Yes. It's about finding the right moment to offer feedback or ask clarifying questions. They even have this humorous example of a boyfriend who totally misreads his girlfriend venting about her day. He thinks she's asking for solutions when she just needs to let off steam.
Been there.
This really drives home the importance of understanding the speaker's needs, not just their words.
Oh, I've been on both sides of that miscommunication.
Yeah,
It's a good reminder to pause and really consider what the other person is trying to convey.
exactly.
The book then contrasts this scenario with the approach of a well-known Chinese talk show host, Lu Yu.
Oh, okay.
She combines active listening with pointed questions to make her guests feel comfortable while drawing out incredible stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's like she creates this safe space for them to open up,
Yeah.
and the results are fascinating.
The example they provide with historian Yi Zongtian is a perfect illustration.
Okay.
He starts talking about his book, and Lu Yu asks a seemingly simple question about how long it took to write. But that question unlocks this incredible story about his writing process and his deep passion for history. It wouldn't have happened without that foundation of active listening.
Right.
It makes you realize how a well-placed question, fueled by genuine curiosity, can reveal so much more than just a surface-level answer.
That's a great reminder to be more intentional with our questions, to think about how we can spark those deeper conversations.
Yeah.
And to wrap up this chapter on listening, they share a heartwarming anecdote that I think will resonate with many parents out there.
Okay.
It's about a mom who misinterprets her son hoarding apples.
Oh.
She assumes he's being greedy, but it turns out he's saving the best one for her.
It's a charming story, but it also underscores a crucial point.
Right.
seeking clarification before jumping to conclusions, especially when it comes to those we love.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to let our assumptions and biases cloud our understanding.
Yeah.
So taking a moment to pause, ask questions, and really listen can prevent a lot of misunderstandings, especially in emotionally charged situations.
That's such an important point.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this solid foundation of listening. What comes next in our communication journey?
Well, chapter 2 delves into the often overlooked but essential element of feedback.
Okay.
And they kick things off with a scenario that's become all too common in our digital age.
Huh?
The unanswered WeChat message.
Oh.
Many listeners might be unfamiliar with WeChat,
Okay.
but think of it as China's version of WhatsApp,
Okay.
a platform where communication is often instant and constant.
Right.
So in this scenario, someone sends a message and is met with silence.
Oh, yeah.
What might seem like a casual oversight to one person can be interpreted as a deliberate snub by another,
Right.
highlighting how cultural differences can lead to communication breakdowns.
Oh, the dreaded unanswered message.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Right.
But you're right. It's interesting to think about how something so seemingly simple can have such different meanings depending on cultural norms and expectations.
Exactly.
So how does the book tie this back to the broader topic of feedback?
They make a fascinating connection between this modern-day dilemma and the fundamental human need for responsiveness. They actually cite a striking statistic about infants needing a response within 7 seconds to feel secure.
Wow.
It highlights how crucial feedback is, especially for a child's development.
Okay.
Even if it's just a simple acknowledgement or a reassuring touch, that feedback creates a sense of connection and safety.
That makes you think about how even the smallest gestures can have a huge impact.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's not just about babies either.
Right.
We all crave that sense of being heard and understood.
Exactly. They even tie this concept to the story about the child who's afraid of the dark,
Oh.
emphasizing how feedback brings light to communication.
Okay.
This resonated with me because it applies even when we can't see each other,
Right.
which is so relevant in our increasingly digital world.
Yeah.
We rely on words, emojis, even reaction buttons to bridge that gap and assure each other that we're listening,
Right.
that we care.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like feedback illuminates the path of communication,
Right.
helping us navigate those unseen spaces.
Mhm.
And speaking of connection, they use the example of the robot in the movie Real Steel.
Oh.
Remember how it could mimic the boxer's moves?
Mm-hmm.
They use that as an analogy for how responsiveness builds connection, even between a human and a machine.
That's a brilliant analogy.
Yeah.
It shows that even in artificial intelligence, responsiveness is key to forging a bond.
Right.
And this leads seamlessly into their discussion of sincerity in communication.
Okay.
They cite research that consistently shows people value sincerity above almost all other traits.
Mm-hmm.
They even reference an experiment from 1968 where participants rated sincerity as one of the most desirable qualities in a person.
It's a powerful reminder that genuineness really matters.
It is.
And they reinforce this point with quotes from two figures who, despite their cultural and historical differences, both champion the importance of sincerity.
Oh, wow.
Mencius and Ben Franklin. Mencius, a renowned Chinese philosopher, believed that sincerity was the way of heaven, suggesting it's an integral part of the natural order.
Okay.
And across the globe, and centuries later, Ben Franklin, one of America's founding fathers, noted that sincerity begets sincerity,
Oh, wow.
emphasizing the cyclical nature of genuine interaction.
I love how they've woven together these diverse voices to highlight the universal appeal of sincerity.
Right.
It's fascinating to contrast this with the example they give of insincere politicians,
Oh, yeah.
which is something most people can relate to. You can just tell when someone isn't being genuine, right? And it makes you think about how those communication patterns play out in the real world,
Yeah.
eroding trust and hindering effective dialogue.
It definitely makes you more aware of those subtle cues and how they influence our perceptions.
Yeah.
But okay, how do we actually put this sincerity into practice when it comes to giving feedback,
Okay.
especially when it comes to encouraging others,
Right.
which can be tricky sometimes?
Well, they offer a range of practical strategies, starting with a story about a young girl named Xiao Shuang who's reluctant to do chores.
Okay.
Her mom starts using encouraging phrases, focusing on Xiao Shuang's effort rather than just the outcome.
Yeah.
And guess what?
What?
Her motivation skyrockets.
Okay, I got to ask, what kind of encouraging phrases are we talking about?
Okay.
Because I know a lot of parents, myself included,
Mm-hmm.
who struggle with finding the right words to motivate their kids without resorting to bribes or threats.
They emphasize the importance of being specific and genuine in your praise.
Okay.
Instead of just saying, good job, you might say.
Uh-huh.
Wow, you really put a lot of effort into organizing those toys. The room looks so much neater now.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
It's about highlighting the process as well as the result.
Exactly.
But I imagine this applies beyond parenting, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, anyone who's ever tried to give feedback knows how difficult it can be to strike that balance between being honest and being encouraging.
This resonates on so many levels. It's relevant to parents, obviously, but
Mm.
also to anyone who's ever struggled with giving or receiving feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And they make it clear that this focus on encouragement isn't just for kids.
Right.
They even dedicate a section to how it benefits workplace communication.
That's so true. A little bit of encouragement can go a long way in boosting morale and productivity.
It can.
And speaking of impactful encouragement, they tell a remarkable story about a young Andrew Carnegie and his stepmother.
Okay.
He's feeling discouraged about his work,
Uh-huh.
and she simply puts a hand on his shoulder and says, "Andrew, I believe you're going to be a very successful man."
Wow.
That single phrase changed his life.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Talk about the power of well-timed, sincere feedback. It underscores how a few words of encouragement spoken with genuine belief can have a profound impact on someone's trajectory.
Wow.
They also provide some really practical tips for encouraging others beyond just verbal praise.
Oh,
For instance, they suggest using nonverbal cues like a pat on the shoulder or a warm smile to convey support and appreciation.
okay.
And they even advocate for a tactic they call compare down.
Compare down.
Yeah.
That sounds intriguing.
It is.
What's that all about?
It's a clever way to boost someone's confidence by comparing them favorably to someone who's struggling.
Okay.
Like if your friend is nervous about a singing competition, you could say, remember that guy who went off-key the whole time last year?
Right.
You're way better than that.
Okay, that's hilarious.
Right.
And I can see how it would work. A little bit of humor combined with a gentle comparison can really help someone reframe their perspective and feel more confident.
Exactly.
So we've covered listening and feedback, two essential elements of effective communication.
Yes.
What's next on our deep dive agenda?
Well, get ready to uncover some secrets of persuasion.
Okay.
Because Chapter 3 is all about effectively getting your point across and winning people over. And they start with this incredibly relatable and humorous anecdote about a wife who uses the foot-in-the-door technique to convince her husband to buy her a handbag.
Hold on, foot in the door.
Yeah.
Fill me in. How does that work?
Okay.
And how does a handbag fit into all of this?
Imagine this. The wife knows her husband would balk at the price of the handbag if she asked outright.
Okay.
So she starts with a smaller request, a bottle of perfume. He readily agrees. She showers him with praise for being so thoughtful.
Okay.
And then subtly, she steers him back to the handbag,
Uh-huh.
mentioning how it would complement the perfume perfectly.
Oh,
Of course he caves.
that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's like she primed him for the bigger ask by securing that initial yes.
Exactly.
But wouldn't he eventually catch on to her tactics?
Well, that's the thing about these psychological principles. They
Yeah.
often work on a subconscious level.
Okay.
This foot-in-the-door technique plays on our desire to be consistent with our previous actions. Once we've agreed to a small request, we're more likely to agree to a larger one, even if it's not something we'd initially be inclined to do.
That's fascinating. So it's like a subtle nudge towards a desired outcome, exploiting our inherent need for consistency.
Exactly.
And the book even connects this to the door-in-the-face technique,
Right.
which is essentially the opposite approach.
Right.
You start with a huge, unreasonable request, knowing it'll be rejected,
Mm-hmm.
and then follow up with a smaller, more reasonable one,
Right.
which suddenly seems much more appealing in comparison.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a bold strategy.
It is.
But I can see how it would work. It's all about shifting our perception of what's acceptable.
Yeah.
They would just throw these techniques out there without any evidence, would they?
No.
I mean, is there any scientific backing for this?
Of course, they actually cite a study where researchers ask people to put up these huge unsightly signs in their yards.
Okay.
The people who had previously agreed to a smaller request, like signing a petition, were far more likely to agree to the big, unreasonable sign request.
Wow, that's pretty convincing.
It is.
It's like those small acts of compliance pave the way for bigger ones down the line.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder where else these techniques are being used.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see foot in the door everywhere now.
Right.
And they even mention how this applies to dating.
Oh, yeah.
Starting with a low-stakes request like let's grab a drink is way more effective than jumping straight to go on a date with me.
It takes the pressure off.
Right?
And once you've got that initial yes,
Right,
it's
yeah.
easier to build on that foundation.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these persuasion techniques can be incredibly effective.
They are powerful.
But isn't there a risk of it feeling manipulative if you're not careful?
That's a great point, and it's something the book acknowledges as well.
Okay.
While these techniques can be powerful tools for persuasion,
Right.
it's essential to use them ethically and with genuine intentions.
Right.
Persuasion shouldn't be about tricking people into doing things they don't want to do.
Yeah.
It's about effectively communicating your ideas and influencing others in a way that benefits both parties.
That makes sense. It's like you want to win people over, not manipulate them.
Exactly.
So are there any other persuasion techniques they cover that aren't quite so sneaky?
Absolutely. The book goes beyond these tactical approaches and dives into the power of emotional appeals.
Okay.
And they illustrate this with a historical example that's absolutely brilliant.
Okay.
It's the story of Zhuo Shichulong, a strategic advisor during China's warring states period.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Okay.
What was this advisor trying to persuade someone to do?
He needed to convince the queen to send her son as a hostage to a rival kingdom.
Oh, wow.
A pretty tough ask, right?
Yeah.
So how did he do it?
Yeah.
He didn't resort to threats or trickery.
Right.
Instead, he started by finding common ground, emphasizing his genuine concern for the queen and her son's safety.
Okay.
He built rapport, established trust.
Uh-huh.
And then, and only then, did he lay out his logic, which was all tied to protecting her son in the long run. It's a masterclass in persuasive communication.
So it wasn't about manipulating her emotions, but about appealing to them authentically.
Exactly.
He connected with her on a human level first, which made his argument much more persuasive.
Right.
It's like logic alone isn't always enough.
Yeah.
You have to touch people's hearts as well as their minds.
Exactly. And this brings us to a crucial point.
Okay.
Humans are emotional beings.
Right.
Even the most stubborn person can be swayed if you connect with them on a deeper level,
Right.
appealing to their values, aspirations, and fears.
Okay.
And the book emphasizes that this emotional connection should be genuine, not manufactured.
That makes sense. People can usually sense when you're being disingenuous.
Yes.
And that erodes trust instantly.
They even give the example of a young Galileo persuading his father to let him pursue science instead of medicine.
Okay.
Instead of arguing about logic or practicality,
Yeah.
Galileo draws parallels between his passion for science and his father's own love story. It's about making the argument resonate with the listener's own experiences and emotions.
That's brilliant. It's like he personalized the argument, making it relatable and emotionally resonant.
Exactly.
And speaking of personalization, they also share an example of a salesperson who bonds with a client over their shared love of movies.
Oh.
It highlights how shared interests can transform a purely transactional interaction into a genuine connection, sometimes even a friendship.
Exactly. And this brings us back to Carnegie's famous advice about discussing what people value most.
Yeah.
They even mention how Theodore Roosevelt, the U.S. president, used to research his guests' interests before they visited the White House.
Wow.
He understood the power of making people feel seen and heard.
Right.
And that starts with talking about what they care about.
That's such a powerful lesson.
It is.
It's about putting in the effort to understand the other person's perspective,
Yeah.
their passions, their world.
Right.
And it's not just about grand gestures either. They have this charming anecdote about a gentleman who spends an afternoon discussing ships with a young William Phelps, even though he knows nothing about them.
Oh.
It's a lovely example of putting the other person at ease, even if it means feigning interest for a while. Like sometimes the most persuasive act is simply to be a good listener.
And that brings us to a question for you, dear listener.
Okay.
How often do you adapt your conversation to the other person's interests? It's easy to gravitate towards what we know and care about.
Right.
But true communication is about building bridges, even if they lead to uncharted territory.
That's such a great challenge.
Yeah.
And it perfectly encapsulates the essence of effective communication.
Right?
Being adaptable, curious,
Yeah.
and genuinely interested in connecting with others on a deeper level.
Exactly.
Welcome back to our deep dive into 100 ways to communicate effectively.
Oh, thanks.
We're picking up where we left off,
Oh, okay.
exploring the multifaceted world of communication through the lens of this insightful Chinese text. Last time we uncovered the power of active listening, sincere feedback, and persuasive techniques.
Okay.
Are you ready to tackle some new communication challenges?
Absolutely. We're moving into territory that can be a bit tricky to navigate,
Okay.
but the book offers some really practical advice.
Good.
For example, Chapter 4 delves into the art of refusal,
Okay.
which can be particularly nuanced depending on cultural
A
context.
refusal.
Yeah,
It sounds so simple just saying no,
right.
but I can imagine how it could become a communication minefield,
It can.
especially when you factor in different cultural norms and expectations.
Exactly. And they start with this anecdote about a soldier who's trying to warn his general that he's about to drink dirty dishwater.
Oh.
But the general keeps interrupting him, assuming he's just being hesitant.
Oh, no.
Of course, things don't end well for the general,
Oh, gosh.
highlighting how interrupting, even with good intentions, can lead to major misunderstandings.
I bet that wasn't a pleasant experience for the general. But it's a good reminder to let people finish their thoughts before jumping in, right?
It is.
Especially when it comes to something as important as, avoiding a mouthful of dirty dishwater.
It's a humorous example, but it underscores a crucial point.
Yeah.
Sometimes interrupting can be a sign of disrespect, preventing someone from fully expressing themselves.
Right.
And this segues into their discussion of how refusal can actually be a sign of respect,
Okay.
both for yourself and the other person.
Right.
It's about honoring your own boundaries and being honest about your limitations.
That's interesting. So refusal isn't just about saying no.
Right.
It's about setting healthy boundaries and communicating your needs assertively.
Exactly.
But how do you do that without coming across as rude or confrontational?
Right.
Especially in situations where saying no directly might be considered disrespectful.
They actually provide some really helpful tips on how to use body language to subtly communicate no. For instance, if someone's invading your personal space, you can subtly step back or angle your body away to create a bit of distance.
Okay.
It's a nonverbal way of asserting your need for space without having to explicitly say back off.
It's like a gentle pushback, sending a clear signal without being aggressive.
Yeah.
I like that. Are there any other nonverbal cues we can use to politely decline something?
They also mention the importance of facial expressions.
Okay.
A firm but polite shake of the head, combined with a neutral expression, can convey a clear no without being overtly confrontational.
Right.
It's all about finding that balance between assertiveness and respect.
It's fascinating how much we can communicate without even saying a word.
It is.
But what about those situations where you can't just rely on body language?
Right.
Like if someone's pressuring you to do something you're not comfortable with,
Yeah.
and they just won't take a hint?
The book suggests a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
First, try explaining your reasoning instead of just saying no. For example, I can't take on that project right now because I'm already overloaded,
Right.
is much more convincing than a flat-out rejection.
That makes sense. It shows that you've considered their request but have a legitimate reason for declining.
Right. And if they persist, you can reiterate your refusal, emphasizing your limitations.
Okay.
But sometimes even that's not enough.
Right.
In those situations, removing yourself from the situation might be necessary.
Okay.
It's like you've communicated your boundaries, you've explained your reasoning,
Yeah.
and if they're still pushing, it's okay to walk away.
Right.
You don't have to subject yourself to uncomfortable or disrespectful interactions.
It's about protecting your own well-being, which is an important part of effective communication.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've tackled the art of refusal, which I think is a skill we can all benefit from honing.
Right.
What other communication gems await us in this chapter?
Well, they actually suggest using humor to soften the blow of a refusal,
Oh.
which I thought was brilliant. Imagine turning down a date with a joke like, I'd love to, but my cat has scheduled a hairball coughing session for that night rain check.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I can totally see that working.
Yeah.
It's lighthearted. It acknowledges the request,
Mm-hmm.
but it clearly communicates that you're not interested.
Exactly. It's a way of saying no without making things awkward or creating tension.
Right.
And it segues nicely into chapter 5, which is all about the power of humor in communication.
Humor.
Yes.
Now that's a topic I can get behind.
Oh, good.
Who doesn't love a good laugh?
Right.
But how does humor fit into the broader context of effective communication?
Okay.
Is it just about cracking jokes and lightening the mood?
It's definitely about that.
Okay.
But they go deeper, exploring how humor can be a powerful tool for building rapport, diffusing tense situations, and even enhancing your personal charm.
Okay.
They even quote someone saying laughter is the shortest distance between two people,
Oh,
which I think perfectly captures the essence of humor's connective power.
I love that quote. It's so true. Laughter can instantly break down barriers and create a sense of shared experience.
It can.
They even discuss how self-deprecating humor can be a sign of confidence and intelligence.
Yes.
It's about being able to laugh at yourself, which shows you're not taking yourself too seriously.
Right.
I can see how that would be, incredibly disarming.
Yeah.
It makes you seem more approachable and relatable.
Exactly. They give an example of a general who's going bald.
Okay.
He walks by a soldier who's meticulously polishing a cannonball, and he says, "You think that's going to make my hair grow back?"
And they talk about how humor can be a great tool in negotiations.
It can.
It can help break the ice,
Yeah.
create a more relaxed atmosphere,
Hmm.
and even make you seem more likable.
Exactly.
That's an interesting point. I've always been told that negotiations should be serious and straightforward,
Right.
but I can see how a well-placed joke could actually help diffuse tension and create a more collaborative environment.
Exactly.
They even suggest using humor in job interviews,
Oh.
which I thought was a bit risky.
This can be.
Humor in a job interview.
Yeah.
That seems like a high-stakes gamble.
It is.
Isn't there a risk of coming across as unprofessional or flippant?
There's definitely a fine line.
Okay.
It's all about reading the room, choosing appropriate humor, and making sure it's relevant to the conversation.
Okay.
They offer a great example of a candidate who's asked about his weaknesses.
Mhm.
He replies, "Well, I'm a bit of a perfectionist."
Okay.
The interviewer chuckles and says, "I don't think that's a weakness."
Mm-hmm.
And the candidate quips, "You wouldn't say that if you saw my desk."
That's a perfect example of using humor to showcase self-awareness without undermining your qualification.
Right.
It's witty, it's relatable, and it shows that he can think on his feet.
Exactly. So while humor can be a powerful tool in communication,
Right.
it's crucial to use it strategically and thoughtfully.
That's great advice. Okay, so we've covered the art of refusal and the power of humor.
Right.
What other communication skills await us in this treasure trove of wisdom?
Well, Chapter 6 is all about mastering the art of praise.
Praise.
Yes.
Like just telling someone they did a good job.
Well, it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
They delve into some really interesting nuances.
I can't imagine a whole chapter dedicated to that.
Oh, yeah.
What's so complicated about giving praise?
It's not just about flattery.
Okay.
They emphasize the importance of sincere and specific praise,
Mhm.
highlighting how it can be incredibly motivating and help build strong relationships.
Yeah.
And they start with a thought-provoking comparison between praise and criticism,
Okay.
which I found really insightful.
Okay, I'm curious, what's the distinction they make between praise and criticism?
They argue that while criticism focuses on what's wrong,
Right.
praise focuses on what's right.
Right.
And when you focus on what's right, you're more likely to see positive changes in behavior.
Okay.
It's about reinforcing those desired actions rather than dwelling on the negative.
That makes a lot of sense. If you constantly point out what someone's doing wrong,
Yeah.
they might feel discouraged and less motivated to improve. But if you highlight what they're doing well, it encourages them to continue those positive behaviors.
They even share a story about a student who's always getting in trouble for talking in class.
Okay.
The teacher decides to try a different approach, praising him when he's quiet and attentive.
Huh.
And guess what?
What?
His behavior starts to change.
That's amazing.
It is.
It's like that old saying, catch them being good.
Exactly.
Instead of focusing on the negative, you actively seek out and acknowledge those moments of positive behavior,
Right.
which encourages more of the same. I could see how this would apply to so many different situations, not just in the classroom.
Absolutely. And they even suggest that praising someone behind their back can be even more powerful.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Praising someone behind their back?
Uh-huh.
How does that work?
It's about expressing genuine appreciation without any expectation of something in return.
Okay.
Like imagine telling a coworker, "Hey, I was just talking to our boss,
Uh-huh.
and she was singing your praises. She's really impressed with your work on that project."
Right.
It's a way of boosting their confidence and showing that you value their contributions without it seeming like you're fishing for compliments or trying to curry favor.
That's such a subtle but effective way to spread positivity.
It is.
And it reinforces the idea that praise should be genuine, not just a tool for manipulation.
Exactly.
They also emphasize that timing is everything when it comes to praise.
Right.
It needs to be timely and specific to be truly effective.
Mm.
Like saying you did a great job on that presentation right after someone's finished presenting is much more impactful than a generic compliment weeks later.
It shows you were paying attention and that your praise is directly linked to their efforts.
Right.
But what about those times when you need to praise someone who's already really good at something?
Okay.
Like, how do you offer genuine praise without it sounding like you're stating the obvious?
That's a great question. They suggest focusing on their work ethic, their creativity, or their leadership instead of just their skills. For example, you might praise a talented musician for their dedication to practice or their ability to inspire others with their passion.
That's a great tip. It's about finding those deeper layers of excellence beyond just the surface level accomplishments.
So praise is obviously a powerful tool for encouragement and relationship building.
It is.
But what about those times when we need to give constructive criticism?
Okay.
How do we deliver that in a way that's helpful rather than hurtful?
That's where chapter 7 comes in.
Okay.
It's all about navigating the delicate art of criticism.
Okay.
And they start with a really important point.
Okay.
Criticism should always be delivered with kindness and respect.
Right.
It's not about tearing someone down.
Right.
It's about helping them grow.
That's so important. It's easy to let our emotions get the better of us when we're giving criticism,
Yeah.
especially if we feel frustrated or let down.
Right.
But if we approach it with kindness and respect, it's more likely to be received in the spirit in which it was intended.
They actually suggest a really helpful technique, the sandwich method.
Sandwich method.
You start with a positive comment,
Uh-huh.
then you deliver the criticism, and then you end with another positive comment.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's like softening the blow and making the criticism more palatable.
Exactly. It creates a more balanced and supportive context for the criticism.
Right.
They also talk about the importance of being specific and focusing on the behavior, not the person.
Okay.
Instead of saying you're lazy, you could say, I noticed that you haven't been meeting your deadlines lately.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
It addresses the issue without making it a personal attack.
Yeah.
It's about separating the action from the individual.
Right. It's about helping them see the behavior as something they can change rather than labeling them as a certain type of person.
Right.
And sometimes it's helpful to phrase criticism as a suggestion instead of a directive.
Okay.
Instead of saying you're doing it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you could say, have you considered trying it this way?
Yep.
It's a subtle shift, but it can make a big difference in how the criticism is received.
It's less confrontational and more collaborative.
Exactly.
It's like you're offering guidance rather than dictating a solution.
Exactly. And they even dedicate a section to tailoring your approach to different personality types.
Okay.
Someone who's sensitive might need a gentler approach than someone who's more thick-skinned.
Right.
It's about being mindful of the other person's communication style and emotional needs.
It's like you're speaking their language both literally and figuratively.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and dive into chapter 8, which is all about self-improvement.
Self-improvement.
Yes,
That seems like a bit of a departure from the communication theme.
it might seem that way.
How does self-improvement tie into effective communication?
They make a compelling argument.
Okay.
Effective communication starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
It's about understanding your own communication style, your strengths, and your weaknesses.
Right.
Only then can you truly connect with others authentically and effectively.
That makes sense. You can't be an effective communicator if you don't understand yourself first.
Right.
What kind of self-awareness exercises do they recommend?
They emphasize the importance of reflecting on your own communication patterns.
Okay.
Think about how you typically respond in different situations. Are you assertive or passive?
Right.
Are you direct or indirect?
Okay.
Do you tend to listen more than you speak or vice versa?
Right.
By becoming aware of your own tendencies, you can start to identify areas where you might need to adjust your approach.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like you're becoming a student of your own communication style.
Exactly. And they also talk about how nonverbal communication can be just as important as what you say.
Right.
Your posture, your facial expressions, your tone of voice,
Well,
it all sends a message.
it's like our bodies are constantly communicating, even when our words are silent.
They even suggest practicing in front of a mirror to become more aware of your nonverbal cues.
Okay.
Pay attention to how you come across when you're feeling confident, nervous, angry, or joyful. The more aware you are of your own nonverbal signals, the better you can control them and ensure they're aligned with your intended message.
That's a great tip. I'm definitely going to try that.
Good.
But what about those times when our emotions get the better of us?
Right.
Like, how can we maintain composure and communicate effectively when we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed?
That's where emotional regulation comes in.
Okay.
They dedicate a whole section to the importance of managing your emotions.
Right.
They argue that when you're in control of your emotions, you're better able to communicate clearly and effectively. If you're feeling angry or frustrated, it's going to come across in your communication even if you try to hide it.
That's so true. It's like our emotions have a way of leaking out no matter how hard we try to suppress them.
So they recommend taking a moment to calm down before responding to a difficult email or having a tough conversation.
Right.
Practice deep breathing, go for a walk, do whatever you need to do to regain your composure before engaging in communication.
It's about responding, not reacting. It's about taking that pause to process your emotions before you say something you might regret.
Exactly. And they also talk about the importance of being confident in your communication.
Okay.
Not arrogant, but confident.
Confidence.
Yes,
That's easier said than done.
it can be.
What if you're just naturally shy or introverted?
They emphasize that confidence comes from preparation and self-belief.
Okay.
They offer a great example of a young woman presenting her ideas to a group of senior executives.
Okay.
She's nervous, but she takes a deep breath, reminds herself of her expertise,
Yeah.
and delivers her presentation with conviction. And guess what?
What?
She wins over the executives.
That's a great reminder that confidence is contagious.
It is.
When you believe in what you're saying, others are more likely to believe in it too.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered self-awareness, nonverbal communication, emotion regulation, and confidence.
We have.
What else is in store for us in this chapter on self-improvement?
Well, they also talk about the importance of continuously learning and expanding your knowledge.
Okay.
They argue that the more you know, the more confident and effective you'll be as a communicator.
Right.
They encourage readers to read widely, take courses, attend workshops, and engage in meaningful conversations with people from diverse backgrounds.
It's like they're saying that communication isn't just about mastering a set of skills.
Right.
It's about constantly growing and evolving as a person.
Mm-hmm.
The more well-rounded you are, the more effectively you can connect with others and share your ideas.
Exactly. Okay. Ready to move on to chapter 9.
Okay.
This one is all about public speaking, a skill that many people dread.
Public speaking.
Yes.
Oh, it's definitely one of my biggest fears.
Really?
Just the thought of getting up in front of a crowd makes me break out in a cold sweat.
Oh, wow.
But I know it's an essential skill.
It is.
So I'm ready to face my fears and learn from the masters.
Good.
What kind of public speaking wisdom does this book offer?
They start with the basics, emphasizing that preparation is key.
Okay.
Know your material inside and out,
Right.
practice your delivery,
Mm-hmm.
and anticipate potential questions.
Okay.
They even suggest recording yourself and watching it back to identify areas where you can improve your posture gestures and vocal variety.
That's a great tip. It's like you become your own audience, which can help you see yourself from a different perspective
Right.
and make those necessary adjustments.
Right.
They also talk about the importance of connecting with your audience.
Yes.
Make eye contact, use humor, and tell stories that resonate with their experiences.
Right.
It's about making them feel like you're talking to them, not at them.
It's about building rapport and creating a shared experience. It's
Yeah.
like you're inviting them into your world and letting them see your passion for the topic.
But what if you're just not a naturally charismatic speaker?
Okay.
Like, what if you're more comfortable with data and logic
Yeah.
than with storytelling and humor?
They address that.
Okay.
They emphasize that finding your own voice and speaking authentically is far more important than trying to be someone you're not.
Right.
Don't try to force humor if it doesn't come naturally.
Right.
Focus on your strengths and let your passion for the topic shine through.
That's reassuring. It's like you don't have to be a stand-up comedian to be an effective public speaker.
Right.
You just have to be yourself and connect with your audience on a genuine level.
Exactly. And they also highlight the importance of pauses.
Oh.
They can be just as effective as words.
Okay.
They even use the example of a famous Chinese comedian who's known for his perfectly timed pauses.
Okay.
He'll say something funny, then pause,
Uh-huh.
letting the laughter build before delivering his next line.
Oh.
It's all about creating anticipation and engaging the audience on multiple levels.
That's such a clever technique. It's
Yeah.
like you're giving the audience a moment to process the humor,
Yeah,
to let it sink in before moving on to the next point.
Yeah.
It creates a sense of rhythm and momentum.
exactly. And this leads us to our final chapter. Chapter 10 is all about communication strategies for different types of relationships.
Okay.
They cover everything from dealing with difficult bosses to communicating effectively with your kids.
Okay, that sounds super practical.
Yeah.
Navigating different relationship dynamics can be challenging. So I'm eager to hear what wisdom they offer.
Right.
Where do they start?
Well, they kick things off with a really interesting section on how to communicate effectively with your superiors.
Okay.
They emphasize the importance of being respectful, clear, and concise in your communication.
Right.
They also advise against gossiping or complaining about coworkers,
Yeah.
which can quickly erode trust and create a negative work environment.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
It's about focusing on solutions, not problems.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
about building professional relationships based on respect and integrity.
Exactly. And they even offer guidance on how to handle difficult conversations with your boss,
Okay.
like asking for a raise or addressing a conflict.
Right.
They suggest preparing your points in advance,
Mhm.
focusing on the positive contributions you've made,
Okay.
and approaching the conversation with a collaborative mindset.
That's so helpful. It's like you're going into the conversation prepared and empowered rather than feeling anxious and uncertain.
Exactly.
They also offer some great tips for communicating with your coworkers.
Yes.
Be supportive, offer help when needed,
Mm-hmm.
and avoid getting caught up in office drama.
Yeah.
It's about fostering a positive and collaborative work environment where everyone feels valued and respected.
It's about building a team spirit, recognizing that you're all working towards a common goal.
And then they delve into the often challenging world of parent-child communication.
Oh, yeah.
They emphasize the importance of being patient, listening attentively, and trying to see things from your child's perspective.
Right.
It's so important. Kids often communicate in ways that are different from adults, so it's crucial to meet them where they are and really listen to what they're trying to express.
Exactly. They also talk about the importance of setting boundaries and being consistent in your parenting.
Hey.
If you say you're going to do something, do it. Kids need to know that they can trust you and that your words have meaning.
Consistency is key.
Yeah.
It helps kids feel secure and understand the expectations.
Right.
But what about those times when your kids just won't listen, no matter how patiently you try to communicate?
They offer some practical strategies for dealing with challenging behavior,
Okay.
like redirecting their attention, offering choices,
Yeah.
and using natural consequences.
Okay.
It's about finding a balance between setting limits and fostering independence.
It's like you're teaching them how to navigate the world, how to make responsible choices, and how to communicate effectively themselves.
Exactly. And finally, they even dedicate a section to communicating effectively with strangers.
Okay.
They emphasize the importance of being polite, respectful, and avoiding making assumptions.
That's a great reminder. It's so easy to jump to conclusions about people we don't know, but it's important to approach every interaction with an open mind and a willingness to connect.
They also talk about the importance of being aware of cultural differences in communication.
Right.
What might be considered polite in one culture could be considered rude in another.
Yeah.
They encourage readers to be mindful of these nuances and to approach intercultural communication with sensitivity and respect.
That's such an important point, especially in our increasingly globalized world.
It is.
It's about recognizing that communication isn't just about the words we use.
Right.
It's about understanding the cultural context and adapting our approach accordingly.
Exactly. So we've explored a wide range of communication skills, from the fundamentals of listening and feedback to the intricacies of persuasion, refusal, humor, praise, criticism, self-awareness, public speaking, and even navigating different relationship dynamics.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. I feel like we've uncovered a treasure trove of communication wisdom drawn from both ancient philosophy and modern research.
But I have to admit, it's a lot to take in.
It is a lot.
I'm starting to feel like my brain is overflowing with information.
Don't worry, that's perfectly normal.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, exploring a wide range of communication concepts and techniques.
So how do we make sense of it all?
Okay.
How do we distill these insights into actionable steps we can take to become more effective communicators in our own lives?
Well, that's where the real work begins.
Okay.
It's not enough to simply absorb this information. We have to put it into practice.
Right.
But before we delve into the application phase, I think it's time for a quick recap of the key takeaways from this chapter.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into 100 ways to communicate effectively. We've journeyed through the complexities of listening, feedback, persuasion, and even the art of saying no gracefully. We've explored the power of humor, the nuances of praise and criticism, and the importance of self-awareness. And we've even delved into the challenges of communicating effectively in different relationships. But now it's time to bring it all together.
It's been quite a journey. We've covered so much ground exploring a vast landscape of communication concepts and techniques. But now we need to shift our focus from exploration to application.
So how do we take all of this wisdom and how do we put it into practice in our own lives? It's one thing to understand these concepts, but it's another thing entirely to apply them in real-world situations.
Well, I think the first step is to identify which areas resonate most with you. Which of these communication skills do you feel you need to work on the most? Is it active listening, giving constructive criticism, expressing yourself assertively?
That's a great point. It's about recognizing our own communication strengths and weaknesses. We can't improve if we don't know where we need to grow.
Exactly. Once you've identified those areas, you can start to consciously apply the techniques and strategies we've discussed. It might feel a little awkward or unnatural at first, but like any skill, the more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
It's like learning a new language or a musical instrument. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to step outside of your comfort zone. But the rewards are definitely worth it.
Absolutely. And remember, effective communication isn't just about mastering a set of techniques. It's about cultivating a mindset of empathy, respect, and genuine connection. It's about approaching every interaction with a willingness to understand the other person's perspective, to listen deeply, and to communicate your own thoughts and feelings clearly and authentically.
That's beautifully said. It's like we're not just learning how to communicate, we're learning how to connect on a deeper human level. But I have to admit, even with all of this incredible insight, I still feel a little overwhelmed.
Mm.
Where do I even begin?
Well, one of the most valuable takeaways from this book is that effective communication is a skill that can be learned and improved upon. It's not something you're born with, it's a lifelong journey of growth and discovery. So be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and remember that every interaction is an opportunity to practice and refine your communication skills.
That's such a reassuring thought. It
Yeah.
takes the pressure off and reminds us that we're all works in progress. So we don't have to be perfect communicators overnight. We just have to be willing to keep learning and growing.
Exactly. And as you embark on this communication journey, remember the power of sincerity. People can spot a fake from a mile away. When you're genuine in your communication, it builds trust and rapport, which makes it much easier to connect with others and get your point across.
Right. Authenticity is key.
Mhm.
People respond to genuine connection, not manipulative tactics. And speaking of genuine connection, we can't forget the importance of active listening, which is more than just hearing words. It's about truly understanding the other person's perspective, asking clarifying questions, paying attention to nonverbal cues, and being willing to adapt your own communication style to make the other person feel heard and understood.
It's about putting aside your own agenda for a moment and truly focusing on what the other person is trying to communicate. It's about listening with your heart as well as your head.
And sometimes it's about knowing when to speak and when to stay silent.
They also offered some really practical advice on giving and receiving feedback effectively. Remember the sandwich method for delivering criticism? Start with a positive, address the issue, and end with another positive. And when it comes to giving praise, be specific and timely. It makes it much more meaningful.
Oh, and I loved all the examples they gave of how to use humor to diffuse tense situations, build rapport, and even enhance your personal charm. It's such a powerful tool when used appropriately.
It can really lighten the mood and make you seem more approachable.
So after all of this incredible insight, what's one thing you think our listeners should try implementing in their own communication today?
That's a great question. Hmm. There's so much valuable advice in this book. It's hard to choose just one thing. But if I had to pick, I'd say focus on cultivating genuine curiosity in your interactions. We all have a tendency to focus on what we want to say, but true communication is about building bridges even if they lead to uncharted territory. So the next time you're having a conversation, try asking more questions about the other person's passions, hobbies, or experiences. You might be surprised at how much you learn and how much stronger that connection becomes.
That's a fantastic challenge. It's about shifting our focus from self-promotion to genuine interest in the other person. It's about seeing every interaction as an opportunity to learn and grow, to expand our understanding of the world and the people in it. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into 100 ways to communicate effectively.
It's been an absolute pleasure exploring these communication gems with you.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and practical tools to enhance your communication skills.
Remember, effective communication is a lifelong pursuit. Keep practicing, keep learning, and keep those communication channels open.
And be sure to share your thoughts and experiences with us on our social media channels. We always love hearing from you. Until next time, happy communicating.